For quite a while, I've been thinking about the difference between being versus doing. And this actually started when I lived in Ethiopia, which was 10 years ago now. And I went there with a lot of wanting to help save the world. And I realized it was really hard to do that. And instead of being able to do things, I had a lot of time on my hands. And so it was hard learning how to work with that, of wanting to help, but not knowing how to, and just running into all sorts of obstacles. So I wrote a little poem as I was reflecting on this that I'll share. Being is doing, while doing is not always being. The trick is to be doing while also to be being. To be the being without the urge to always be doing. Is it possible to do too much being? The doing mind restlessly squirms at simply being. Just being is living. Just doing is acting. There is a time for action if guided by direction. Direction guided by reflection. Reflection guided by the intention to live a meaningful life. Flowing unhindered by fear to a natural expression of reality. A natural experience of right now, the present being. The drive to survive often misses the opportunity to also thrive by simply pausing to remember that we are also alive. So in Ethiopia, what I learned was that the more meaningful experiences that I had were actually the ones of just being with others, of drinking lots and lots of coffee, which is their national pastime practically, but just actually understanding each other, learning, building those relationships to really just understand how they lived and what their struggles were, and to truly just connect and to understand. That was much, much more meaningful than the projects that I was trying to do of teaching composting and growing chicken coops and stuff. I think those relationships were much more impactful and beneficial in the long run. At the Abbey, we do a ton of doing, but in a very virtuous way. But it's also easy to slip out of the being. So in my mind, the being part is much as an awareness with a bigger perspective of things, especially the Buddhist worldview, thinking about lifetimes, thinking about cause and effect and karma and impermanence, having that much bigger perspective. It's about being clear on my motivation and what my state of mind is at. It's about staying connected to the heart and being present in my body rather than always externally focused. It's aware of my thoughts and feelings, and also aware of others' thoughts and feelings, and having just that greater awareness of everything. It's much more kind of in an alignment with a view of dependent arising, of just seeing things in a much more fluid, dynamic, constantly changing state, of just an awareness of those many, many different factors and perspectives. And taking that time to slow down and to simply be and reflect and digest on things, I found really is important for helping my mind stay more clear and balanced, and to keep that bigger perspective in mind and coming back to that bigger picture. So in a way, sometimes that the best thing I can do is just to simply slow down and be and to process things and to take that moment to pause and to check in. And from there, I can move about with a lot more just awareness and ease, and having that bigger perspective. Whereas doing is much more task-oriented. It's that externally focused, checking things off the list, seeing things as more as objects and things to accomplish. And it has a much more narrow, fixed view of just wanting to get it done and, having that narrow view. It also, I sometimes have this, like, I got to get this done so that I can then have the space to relax and be present. And that doesn't work that way. When I get that mentality, it has a sense of urgency and anxiety, and I can see the self-centered mind just, again, getting very narrow and very fixated and making each tiny little task that I have to do, turning it into a really big deal when really it's not. But it just creates a lot more tension and anxiety rather than just relaxing and keeping that bigger perspective and knowing that, yes, I'll get the thing done at some point, but it doesn't have to be in a sequential order of doing this thing and this thing and this thing, because as we know, things arise and change constantly. Recently, I was having a good conversation with someone about offering service in relation to living with people that we're offering service with. And again, how important it is to see the person as the person, not as an object or a task to get something done. And when I have that view of seeing someone as just an object to get something done, usually I run into bumps or things don't go nearly as well. But when I can take that time to really see that the person has feelings and thoughts and is constantly changing and working on different things that I don't know about, then I can try to have a bigger perspective and approach in really seeing them as a human being. And really learning more about who they are and creating that sense of understanding and wanting to understand them so that we can do things in a more fluid and supportive way rather than just the doing. I mean, I've come up with this little term that the goal is to really see people as human beings, not human doings. That, I mean, it's so easy to see things as human doings, seeing those tasks, but it's like, but if I can really see them as an embodied, changing, dynamic being, then things actually go a lot more smoothly and joyfully, actually. I mean, we have our little saying, our offering service prayer, that differences in ways of doing things may arise, but I mean, I've pretty much always say differences in doing things will arise. It's pretty much inevitable that we're all going to have different ways of doing things, but the point is that we don't need to see them as conflict, but as just that creative exchange, that it's very dynamic and there's a million different ways of doing things and perspectives. And remembering that keeps my mind broad and more flexible and dynamic. But if I just see them as a human doing, then that mind gets very narrow and focused and task focused, and it doesn't work out as well as I would like. It doesn't create that condition for harmony and mutual respect and adapting and adjusting to what the situation really is. I've also recognized that I have the what's next mentality of having that list in my mind and be like, okay, I got that thing checked off, what's the next? What's next? What's next? Which is, I mean, I don't want to live my whole life like that and then get to death and be like, what's next? And like, I don't know, I have all these 20 things on my list that I didn't do. So, because that list is never ending. So, and it's always chasing that carrot. So I try to, pause and think of, okay, instead of what's next, what's now? Where am I at right now? Considering the list of things to do, but also where am I at and how am I feeling and what are all the different factors that are going on that other community members are going through, or just, again, expanding that bigger picture to take things more in a bigger light of understanding things. And from that, I can actually just take a breath to slow down and relax and to be aware. I think that simple pause of coming back to being aware and present is so important, because then that brings me back to my heart and wanting and my intentions to have that greater connection and be of benefit, but also with a mind that's more at peace and at ease. So our task, or my task, I see, is to combine these two things of the doing and the being, and not see them as separate, but to find that joy and that openness to be able to stay present while at the same time as doing things and serving in a greater way. And so to be able to do that with a much more greater perspective and motivation for the greatest benefit of all beings.